Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Batman issue 153 by Chip Zdarsky, Jorge Jimenez and Tormo More. Batman returns to Gotham in the wake of absolute power and of Bruce's big revitalization of part of the city. Bruce rebuilding or remaking part of the city has been done to death by now, but I really like how Chip sets his take apart from others as we actively see that right here in the first page, Bruce's plan is actually working as a family cut across an old part of town, and instead of running into a new Joe Chill, they run into a very nice man who directs them on where to go. This leads to Batman getting to have a moment of peace with Jim Gordon, who was finally decided to show up in the book after years away on his own Joker-centric storylines. Batman and Jim get a real cool moment here on the rooftops, sharing a cup of coffee and kind of catching up since Jim is no longer part of the GCPD, he's instead a private eye, and he's feeling good about the future of Gotham now and its people. Batman though still has his reservations, especially thanks to NygmaTech arriving in Gotham, being run by former Riddler Edward Nygma. The news covers Edward's miraculous change of heart and how just in 2 months his company has taken the tech sector by storm with its new proprietary security codes and cryptocurrency, meaning thanks to record profits it's been able to buy up one of Gotham's biggest buildings and move its headquarters into it. An interesting part of this is Edward's company is part of Bruce Wayne's revitalization project, and Bruce is supporting him despite his own company viewing him as the competition. On top of that, Mayor NAKANO again goes on his tirade about masked vigilantes and villains, not wanting anything to do with NygmaTech and having it in Gotham. This is really the same shit the character's been spouting since, like, Future State when he first appeared. NAKANO is just kind of a one-trick pony, and it's really surprising that he has survived this long into this book. No one seems to know what to do with him, or when they do something with him, it's just undercut by everything else that's happening in the book. And I can see the place for a character like him where they need that sort of government stooge type character who's kind of being walked all over, which is what he is here. He's under the thumb of the billionaires of Gotham who are still now part of the Court of Owls, and Commissioner Vandal Savage, who the billionaires have installed as their sort of puppet commissioner in charge of the police instead of Renee Montoya. So I can see where there is a role for him, but just no one does anything with him. It's always the same stuff with him, and he's such a boring character. Luckily, without getting too much into spoilers, that kind of changes by the end of this issue, and we'll get to that. One of the interesting things we do get to see with him here in his office, and he's kind of run down and everything, is that he actually starts to stand up to the billionaires. And just as we're getting some movement on that plot, his family turn up and the scene's kind of cut short because he's got to be there with his family, and he means he has to kind of back down and placate to these billionaires and just be the, the placating Mayor NAKANO that everyone knows. Batman, meanwhile, goes to see Edward, and I love the little dynamic they have here where Edward laments about how much he hates having to work for a living now since it's so boring and tedious, and just robbing banks was so much better and funner. But he does also not hate that he isn't getting punched in the face now by Batman. He's been sick of the beatings and everything that Batman has given him, and he just wants out of that and just wants to make some money, maybe even do the right thing. I like that he seemingly does want to do the right thing. It definitely is played in this scene that he does seem to be changed, or have a change of heart. Of course, we've seen this happen before with multiple villains. Hell, even the Joker had a moment where this happened as well. So this isn't anything new, though I do like how almost immediately we're left on the back foot with Batman, where Batman is obviously letting the paranoia get to him. Was like, obviously Nygma is up to something, so he's been like digging into everything about the guy's business, his code, and he hasn't found anything yet, but he is sure he is going to find something. He even tries to trip Edward up on citing that the servers that he has running in his business are all being cooled by Victor Freeze's technology, thinking that maybe he's working with Freeze, but Edward just comes out and says that, hey, no, I stole Victor's technology, made it better, and are using it to actually do good in the world. And I like that kind of throws Batman for a loop. Like, he expected like some sort of conspiracy where Freeze is working in the background or something, but no, that's not the case. He's actually doing something that maybe Batman should have done as well, utilizing this tech that was to hurt people into something that maybe is doing some good in the world, or some good in Gotham. Batman is forced to leave the scene after all. He is trespassing in this business, and Edward and his chief of security, Rhonda, will call the police if Batman stays any longer. As I said just before, the on the back foot Batman is kind of my favorite Batman. It makes him have to think about what he has to do. And I like that is where we're left with Batman here, where everything he did, everything he tried to trip Edward up on, it didn't work. And he's kind of realizing that this villain is now moving on. He's moving on to something else. As Edward said, he's sick of the beatings that Batman would give him, so he wants to do something else. And it's almost kind of framed as a way as that Batman doesn't like that. He doesn't like that a villain has moved on to something else. And it's a very interesting concept, the Batman who's obsessed with his villains. And I wonder what kind of spin Zdarsky will have on that, because we have seen stuff like that before. There's that age-old concept of, Batman creating the Joker and the Joker needing Batman, that sort of stuff. And I like that that's being applied to other villains outside of the Joker. The next day, Bruce heads into Wayne Enterprises, where we find the people are protesting his revitalization project, calling him a communist because apparently he's doing things like chipping people, so they can be tracked, and all of this stuff that both probably isn't real, but then you realize, oh no, this is Bruce Wayne, this is Batman. It probably is real, and it's really funny to think about that and think that, maybe he actually is right, and maybe these guys are right. But I do like the communist comparisons, especially because recently we got that new Iron Man book from Spencer Ackerman, and that does some similar stuff where Tony is called a communist and everything that Bruce is called here because of what he wants to do with his company. And I always find it interesting that every now and then DC and Marvel have some books that kind of align with each other and like where they're gonna take these stories, and it just kind of shows like how all these characters kind of like spawn from like a handful of different archetypes, and they always kind of spur off these archetypes in different ways, and sometimes those ways kind of overlap, and it's always fun seeing how both companies will deal with similar themes. Bruce brushes off the protesters to go and meet with Rowan Burkmore, the person overseeing Bruce's company since Lucius Fox stepped down. Rowan is a little concerned of how Bruce is being viewed by the company and how he's going about his business, and Bruce isn't really worried at all. He knows it'll all bounce back, but Rowan suggests they should consider maybe an acquisition or a merger with another company. Bruce isn't interested, knowing it'll all sort itself out, the very blasé Bruce Wayne playboy philanthropist guy. So Rowan ends up being quite an interesting character, as we learn that she is actually working with Edward, calling him and revealing that she tried to seed the idea of a merger with NygmaTech to Bruce, but Bruce didn't go for it, and since Edward needs this as some form of legitimacy in the eyes of the mayor, they need to move on to Plan B, something we don't know what is yet, but seemingly sinister. As Rowan tends to that business, Bruce tends to his own important meetings across town, where a group of robbers are trying to get away from a bank after a robbery, but are confronted by Gotham's newest masked hero, Commander Star. The new hero's design is great since it's so garish and over the top, and a complete opposite of Batman's, which is a great signpost for where they're going to use this character for. He's going to be the dark mirror of Batman, more or less. Before the new hero can act though, Batman takes down the getaway van, and Star does try and help in his own way, which is to use a gun to cripple one of the robbers who were trying to escape. Of course, this causes Batman to attack him for using a gun amidst a crowd of people, but is stopped by Commissioner Vandal Savage, who promptly commends Star for his acts of bravery, not so subtly hinting at the fact that this guy and Star are probably working together and Star is doing Vandal's bidding. Mayor NAKANO, who also arrives with Savage, wants Savage to stop the vigilante escapades, and of course Savage takes this as an opportunity to try and take down Batman, but of course the hero escapes in a cloud of smoke. So I can already kind of see what Zdarsky is doing with Commander Star. We learn that he is ex-military and he is just, the government stooge whom I'm sure is under some type of mind control or some type of control that Batman will stop, and hell, maybe even Edward will get involved and actually help out as well. Since I could see him coming after Edward for his past crimes, and then obviously he's starting a company in Gotham, so I imagine he'd be a prime target for this character. Star is also an opposite of Batman, and that's been kind of a running theme for Zdarsky's Batman. He's pitting the hero against a warped version of himself that focus on a key trait of Batman. So like with Failsafe, it was Bruce's paranoia, Zur-En-Arrh was his violent dark side, so I'm intrigued what Commander Star will end up representing. And I think it might be like the heroic side of Batman, being that the character is very, the Commander Star character is very open and like he's very heroic. He's literally wearing the flag, the American flag. He's very patriotic and heroic. So I could see Zdarsky doing that and kind of dissecting the heroic side of Batman and the out in the open side of Batman. Thanks to being injured while taking out the van, Bruce goes to see Leslie Tomkins, who patches him up while listening to Bruce talk about this new so-called hero and how Gotham is on the verge of being good, and this star guy Nygma could jeopardize that. I really like Leslie being realistic with Bruce here. I like that she's kind of like the grounding rod for him, citing how there's always going to be problems and nothing will ever be perfect, and Bruce is doing more good as Bruce Wayne than he is as Batman, with the way he's using his company to revitalize Gotham and all that sort of stuff is much better than him, scrambling across rooftops and throwing batarangs at thugs and everything. It's also the one thing that she approves of over Batman, so I like that Bruce actually also starts to consider that sort of stuff. It really kind of goes to show his relationship with Leslie, and I like when Leslie is used like this as that grounding rod for Bruce, as that character who can come in and be like, hey, kind of rail it back and you have some realistic expectations here. After getting patched up, Bruce decides to walk home, and we get to see how even the homeless have come to hate him and what he's doing, again calling him a commie, not even wanting his handout. Because of this, Bruce starts to sort of see the city a bit different, starts seeing that there's more at work in the city than he thought, like the Court of Owls are making a reappearance, thanks to the billionaires trying to take over the government, and it's cool seeing him realize this and realize that he's going to get dragged into the mud eventually. Is kind of like what Leslie was saying, nothing's ever perfect and it never stays perfect if it is. As Bruce heads home, Edward gets up to something with his servers, hinting that he's up to something nefarious with a riddle whose answer is death. NAKANO ends up having a very bad night as he is shot and killed by someone. Now this is something that I find very funny because I have thought, like, why have they not killed this character off yet? He seems ripe for that. He's kind of fulfilled his, duty in the comics, and now he was kind of languishing there, not really doing anything. And now Zdarsky seems to have thought about that as well, and maybe he actually has an interesting story to tell here by killing off the character and using him to fuel a mystery. Who killed Chris NAKANO? On top of him dying, Bruce also has a bit of a twist come his way as he finds out that someone has filed a claim against him for half of his company's shares, and it looks to be someone claiming to be his brother. So the long lost brother trope is something that's appeared in comics over and over again. So many characters have done it. They've done it with Batman a couple of times as well, and Zdarsky's Batman now has finally done it, and I can't wait to see what he's cooking for us in this. And if I had to theorize, there's talk of Court of Owls making a comeback with these billionaires, so I'm thinking maybe it could be William March coming back, the Talon who thought he was Bruce's younger brother. He could make an appearance somewhere here. This could be something that Edward is cooking up to try and get Bruce's company, because there is that plan B that Rowan was actually working on, so maybe this is it. Maybe they had William hidden away somewhere, that break glass in case of emergency type of situation. Zdarsky's final arc on Batman opens with some very cool twists and turns, with lots of neat continuations from his previous work, with some new and interesting characters like Commander Star making an appearance. I love how Zdarsky is using all of these Batman opposites that he's been creating, like Commander Star, or bringing back into the fold like Zur-En-Arrh, to explore certain aspects of Batman's character, certain key traits that Batman has, and expand on them and how they fit into his role as Batman. I also like that he's this time around focusing on Bruce, because Bruce is a character who hasn't really been part of Zdarsky's run. He's been around, but we've never had a full focus on him. But I like that we're exploring his Bruce side here with the company and what's going on in that, and I think that it often falls by the wayside in most Batman books, so for it to be a big part of it here and be a big part of the mystery, the big main mystery of who shot Chris NAKANO, is quite interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Chip and his team have cooked up for us. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.